So I want to start this morning by saying that this series is overdue. And what I mean by that is that I've been wanting to do a series about finances for a while. And originally I planned to do, the reason I want to do that is because Jesus talks more about finances than he does about heaven and hell. So if Jesus talked about it that much, you've got to think it's important for us to discuss. And I originally planned to do this about a year ago, maybe just over a year ago, and then we had another lockdown for COVID. And just the idea of doing a series about finances and money that you were going to receive through your television just felt wrong to me. It just felt icky. I grew up in the 80s, and what I remember is all these televangelist scandals, and I just didn't want to do that. I said, I got to wait. But then I had another sermon series that I had planned, and this one got put on the back burner for a while. But I decided now's the time to do it. So it's called How to Be Rich. And there's two things about that. First of all, I want to be clear up front. This is based very heavily on a book series by Andy Stanley. It's available on Right Now Media. So you could actually watch this and get ahead if you want to be like a keener. But if you do that, you'll be like, wait a minute, I'm hearing Rob say some of the same stuff that Andy said on the video, and that's by design. Because when I don't feel qualified to cover a topic, I will sometimes rely on those who I feel are more qualified. And when it comes to personal finances, I think they're really important. I just don't feel like I'm very good at it. I don't think I'm really bad at it either. I just don't feel qualified to tell you how to do it. So I am going to lean on Andy Stanley, who's one of my favorite communicators, and he wrote a book called How to Be Rich. And the second thing I want to tell you, and this is really important, the title is How to Be Rich, not How to Get Rich. Small but important difference, okay? This is the right way to live if you are rich. So, when I say the word rich, what do you think of when I say the word rich? How much would you have to earn to be rich? Does anyone want to answer? A little more, yeah. Anyone want to put a number on it? No. Yeah, yearly income. Millions. Okay.
It's over high six figures.
High six figures. Okay. Anyone else? Anyone less lofty? When you're comfortable. Okay, not a bad answer. What? Say again?
I'm rich if I have more than I'm spending.
These are all good answers, and we're going to talk about it as we go here. Rich usually means someone who has more than you. Like if I say, who is rich? You'd say, well, I'm not rich, but that person's rich. The interesting thing about that is if you ask somebody who makes $50,000 a year, most of them would say, not in a room like this because no one's really comfortable doing it, but if you took them privately, they'd say, if I made $100,000, I'd feel rich. Thing is, if you ask somebody who makes $30,000 a year, they would say $60,000. If you ask somebody 25, they'd say $50,000. If you ask somebody who makes $100,000, they'd say $200,000. Rich is double the amount that you possess, generally, according to studies. Rich is a moving target. No matter how much you make, you will never see yourself as rich. Almost never. If you make more than $48,000 a year, you are in the top 1% of the world. The world's average salary is just less than $18,000 a year. So most of us are already rich. Congratulations. I don't see anyone cheering, I just told you you're rich. You don't seem that excited. You might think to yourself, you know what, I'm not rich. I'm actually below the poverty line. And if that's you, this applies to you as well. Even if you're completely poor, you still want to know how to be rich. See, rich people confuse being rich with feeling rich. If I asked you, are you rich? You'd say no, even though you are, because you don't feel rich. When was the last time you felt rich? Andy Stanley talks about being a teenager, working a minimum wage job, but he had no responsibilities and no bills, and so he felt rich. If you think about back to those days, some of you, it's not that far. Some of you are in that right now. If you want something, you just buy it. Because you've got maybe a little bit of money saved up and you don't have any bills, you don't have to pay a mortgage, you don't have to pay a car payment, nothing like that. So I've got money in the account, I want this thing, I'm going to go buy it. So the key is get a minimum wage job and move into your parents' basement. It'll be great. I remember when I was a teenager, I bought a pair of Nike boots for $145. I felt rich at the time. In those days, modern day equivalent would be $300 today. I would never spend $300 on a pair of boots today. I don't know if any of you guys would, but for me, I'd just be like, no. Like, basketball shoes is about the most I'll spend on a pair of shoes, and $300 would be way too much for me. But I was rich at the time. And when you become rich, you move from what you need to what you want. So if, as a teenager, I had all my needs covered. My parents took care of everything. I got to the point of saying, what do I want? I don't need these boots, but I want them. And to be honest, they were the best boots I've ever had. And if I saw them today, I might be inclined, even $300, to buy them. I wore them until my feet went through them. Like they were great. But the thing is, I didn't really need them. I had boots. I saw these and I thought they looked cool, and I wanted them. Thing is, I was rich, but I didn't know how to be rich. I was what you might call new money. When people get rich suddenly, they're not very good at it. I know I talk about sports a lot, indulge me here. 78% of NFL players are bankrupt or financially stressed within 2 years of retirement. And they make millions. All right, NBA is my favorite, so I have a bit better of an idea of them. Like, even a role player on a team is making like $10, $15 million a year. 60% of NBA players are bankrupt within 5 years. And so you've got these people, a lot of whom grew up inner city, not rich. Their only way out was to play this sport. They go to college, they do 1 year, the bare minimum, so they can get into the NBA, and they sign these huge contracts. And then sometimes a shoe company will say, if you wear our shoes, we'll give you even more. Before they even step foot on an NBA court, they're millionaires. And no one has ever taught them how to be rich. And then along with that, I've done some reading on this before. You feel like you owe it to the people who helped you get there. And so you've got like a whole crew, and then you pay for all their stuff. And so everywhere you go, they're walking with you, and you're paying for it, and then you retire and you're not making the salary anymore, but you're still paying for everything. And then suddenly you realize, I've got nothing. So if you get rich suddenly, you're not very good at it. But even worse, almost all rich people are bad at being generous. I'm not saying all, but almost all. The richer people are, the smaller percentage of money they give away. If you earn $50,000 a year, generally speaking, you give 6% to charity. If you make $200,000, you give 4% to charity. And the higher you go, the lower the percentage. So the richer you are, the less, maybe not the less amount of money, because it's 4% of, you can do the math, but percentage-wise, you give less and less and less. The ones who are best at being rich are those who can admit that they are rich. So if I asked all of you guys here, are you rich? Most of you would say no. And so you're not admitting that you're rich, and so you're not going to be intentional about it. Until you admit you're rich, you will never be intentional at being good at it, because that's for somebody else. Someday when I'm rich, I want to be good at it. But it doesn't apply to me because I'm not making 100,000, 600,000, whatever your number is. This moving target, you're not there. And so you're not intentional about being good at it. And again, don't make the mistake of thinking this doesn't apply to you. You may not have 100,000, but on a global scale, you are rich. And chances are, if I'm going to make an assumption here, you're not any better at it than these NFL players, NBA players, or any others. If you've never learned how to be good at it, you're probably not good at it. And I don't know about you, but I want to be good at being rich. And I want that for you guys too. And the best way to learn how to be rich is to follow the will of the one who made you rich. The best way to be rich is to follow the will of the one who made you rich. Everything we have comes from God, and He has a plan for you and a plan for the money He's given you. So we're going to look at a story today from Luke chapter 12. Jesus tells the story of a rich person, but he's actually most times referred to as a rich fool, rich young fool sometimes. And so Jesus has been teaching. You know, if you go through the first part of Luke chapter 12, he's been teaching people about how we need to be committed to him, how important it is to be committed to him, and how God will care for us. And so, you know, that's the context that you're in. You know, you need to be fully committed to me, and God is going to care for you. And out of nowhere, someone calls from the crowd, verse 13, says, "Teacher, please tell my brother to divide our father's estate with me." It's almost like he wasn't paying attention to what Jesus was talking about. You know, just throwing this out there because it's important to me. And so Jesus replied, "Friend, who made me judge over you to decide such things as that?" You know, like, I've got more important things to talk about than your father's inheritance. And then he said, "Beware." He uses this as an opportunity to teach all his followers, everyone who's there. Beware, and imagine how you'd feel if you were this guy. You know, Jesus is teaching, you sort of try and throw something in there, and Jesus basically just shot blocks it, and then uses you as a lesson. He says, "Beware. Guard against every kind of greed. Life is not measured by how much you own." And then he told them a story. A rich man had a fertile farm that produced fine crops. He said to himself, "What should I do? I don't have room for all my crops." And then he said, "I know. I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones. And then I'll have room enough to store all my wheat and other goods. And I'll sit back and I'll say to myself, 'My friend, you have enough stored away for years to come. Now take it easy. Eat, drink, and be merry.'" And that sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Does anyone here actually have the "Eat, Drink, and Be Merry" sign in their house? Like on the wall, or, you know, live, laugh, love, or one of those things? A lot of people may not even know that this is from the Bible, and if they do, they may think it's actually a good thing. And it sounds pretty good. I'd like to eat, drink, and be merry. It actually reminds me of something when I was thinking about this idea of just eating and drinking, be merry, not a care in the world. 2 words, all inclusive. We went, actually, I think it might have actually been this resort, on our honeymoon 22 years ago, to a place in Mexico, all-inclusive resort. I felt rich. I mean, we had spent the money to get there, and they had a special thing where, like, they weren't even allowed to tip. You weren't allowed to, like, carry money with. Well, you could carry, but there'd be no point because you weren't allowed to tip. Everywhere you went, everything was free. I mean, if you were thirsty, you swim up to the bar. If you were hungry, you go to the all-you-can-eat buffet that's there all the time. And if you want to just be merry, you know, you have fun. There's a club on site. There's hammocks, which we spent most of our time in the hammock. You know, you swim for a while, you go back to the hammock. It was laziness, but it was great, especially, you know, after the wedding. It was good. This sounds good, doesn't it? Eat, drink, and be merry. It feels rich. But we've already established that most of us are already rich. So how many of you feel rich? What's the difference? The key word here is margin. Richard Swenson wrote a book called Margin, and he talked about the difference between your load and your limit, and what's in between is your margin. And some people have their load all the way up to the limit. It's like you're completely maxed out, and this is true with, like, your energy, true with your life, true with your finances. Some people are just maxed to the limit, and they have no margin at all. And I can guarantee you those people do not feel rich. But if you are somebody who has your load much lower, I mean, you could actually have it too low, like I did probably on that vacation, where my load was like 0 and the limit was limitless. But there's a healthy medium, and it's going to include a little bit of margin. Margin's the key to feeling rich. It's not about how much you have, but the freedom to spend more and the willpower to spend less. I forget who it was. Someone said something along the same lines when I was asking what it means to be rich. You know, you have the freedom to spend more. You have the freedom to go to the buffet, but you choose not to. It's having the income to buy $300 boots, but making the choice not to. I might even say the wisdom not to. So you need to downsize until you have margin, and then you will feel rich. But we don't like that, do we? We don't like the idea of downsizing. In fact, we often do the opposite. We do what this rich young fool does. We upgrade. We go for the upgrade. He says, "I'll tear down my barns and I'll build bigger ones." I have a phone that does everything I need it to, but it feels a little bit slow. Anyone feel that? You know, if you have this thing in your pocket, it's like, it's not as fast as it used to be. And I think don't quote me on this, but I think they make that happen. You know, when your contract is up, it's like you press a button somewhere, and all of a sudden you're just not getting on the internet just quite as quickly as you used to. You press a button, and it's like, okay, now I'll do it. And it just makes, you know, you're used to a certain speed, and it slows down, and you're like, this isn't good enough anymore. Now, how many of us grew up without cell phones? I mean, for us, you know, it was special if you had a long cord on your phone that was attached to the wall, so you could like leave the room and have a little bit of privacy. I mean, that's what, if you felt rich if you had that. Who remembers living without the internet? Yeah. If you wanted an answer, you had to go to the library. And when we did get the internet, dial-up, right? I mean, could you imagine our kids today having to live with that? If it's a little bit slow, it's like, what's wrong with the Wi-Fi? It's like, well, you know what? You guys have it pretty good. But now my phone doesn't connect immediately, so I want an upgrade. So I take my phone, you know, to the thing. It's a perfectly good phone. I may even be talking on it, or certainly, you know, surfing on it while I'm doing the thing, simply so I can get a better one. And I'm not even an iPhone person. I mean, I'm not saying if you're an iPhone person, this is you, but I know there are some iPhone people that it's like, I got a new iPhone last year and it's perfectly fine, but they came out with like a different letter on the iPhone 13, so I got to go get that one. You know, you're an early adopter, and that's who you are, and you got to get it. And there's nothing wrong with what you have, but you need an upgrade. Upgrade accounts for more margin erosion than anything else. I mean, if the key to feeling rich is having some margin, the more and more you upgrade, the less and less margin you're going to have. It's all about newer and nicer. But being good at being rich isn't just about deciding what to do with your money. You also have to consider what your money is doing with you, or more to the point, to you. The key is to possess money without it possessing you. All right, that's the idea here of how to be rich. Rich people, which includes us, remember, tend to suffer from an affliction. It's called the disease of more. Anyone familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs? All right, if you take any kind of marketing class, you probably come across this. And it starts at the very, very bottom. And you know, these are the things you need to survive. You know, if you need food, you need water, you need rest. But once you have that, you want more. And you know, that's reasonable. Like you're sort of like, if you're talking about the very minimum, if we're talking about like someone who's in poverty, you're going to want more. But the problem is that you always want more. You always want more. And so once you've got those things taken care of, you go to the next level. And eventually you get to this thing called, you know, you're looking for self-actualization, and you're always looking for the next thing, and you're always looking for more, more, more. And you're never really satisfied. And we usually think more about what's ahead than what's behind. You know, you don't think about what you don't have. You think about what you don't have rather than what you do have. And then things go wrong, and then you think about how good things used to be. Like your phone that you're totally disappointed with because it doesn't connect immediately when you go swimming with that on Father's Day, allegedly, and you have no phone now, you think, man, I wish I had my slow old phone. Rich people are plagued by discontentment. The more people have, the more people want. And we'll make it personal. The more you have, the more you want. Andy Stanley has this great quote. It says, if you feed an appetite, it grows. Satisfying an appetite does not diminish it, it expands it. To diminish an appetite, you have to starve it. And as your appetite grows and grows and grows, your margin, the thing that makes you feel rich, gets smaller and smaller and smaller. So even though you are rich, you don't feel rich. You don't have margin. And again, you're not generous. So you aren't good at being rich. So in this story that Jesus tells, everything seems to be going really well for the rich young man. He's going to eat, he's going to drink, he's going to be merry. And again, it sounds great, but what does God say to him? Verse 20, he says, "But God said to him, 'You fool, you will die this very night, and then who will get everything you worked for?'" Yes, a person is a fool to store up earthly wealth, but not have a rich relationship with God. So from an earthly standpoint, the key to feeling rich is margin, and that's a good thing. Again, I think we should have that. But there's a second affliction that comes from wealth, and we're going to talk more about this next week, but I want to mention it today. It's the migration of hope. Rich people suffer from the migration of hope. Wealth becomes a substitute for God. We allow our hope to shift from God's promise to care for us to our ability to hoard in order to protect our future. This isn't in my notes, but it just occurred to me right now. There have been occasions where I've gone to buy something at the store and my card was declined. There's been occasions where I have sinned in a way that put Jesus on the cross. And I will admit to you, the feeling in my stomach was worse when my card was declined than how I felt about my sin in that moment. And that tells me that my hope had migrated to my bank account. Rich people suffer from the migration of hope. Wealth becomes a substitute for God. How much money would you need? How much money would you need to secure your future? I'm not going to ask you again, but just think about it. What would the number be? If you wanted to be secure for every possible eventuality, how much money would you feel like you would need to have in the bank? And the answer, I think someone said this earlier, is more than you currently have. It's always going to be more than you currently have. No matter how much money you have, the answer will always be more. Because Jesus knows this, he uses this opportunity to teach his followers the importance of trusting God rather than in your wealth. So again, remember, he's teaching his disciples, you need to trust in me. It's so important that you trust in me. God's going to take care of all your needs. And some guy tries to hijack the conversation. Tell my brother to share the inheritance with me. And then Jesus tells this story, and then he says, I want to tell you something else. Verse 22, turning to his disciples, Jesus said, "That is why I tell you, not to worry about everyday life. Whether you have enough food to eat or enough clothes to wear, for life is more than food, and your body more than clothing. Look at the ravens. They don't plant or harvest or store food in barns, for God feeds them, and you are far more valuable to him than any birds. Can all your worries add a single moment to your life? And if worry can't accomplish a little thing like that, then what's the use of worrying over big things?" Worry is the evidence that your hope has migrated from God to wealth. He goes on, he says, "Look at the lilies and how they grow. They don't work or make the clothing, yet Solomon in all his glory was not dressed as beautifully as they are. And if God cares so wonderfully for flowers that are here today and thrown in the fire tomorrow, he will certainly care for you. Why do you have so little faith? And don't be concerned about what to eat or what to drink. Don't worry about such things. These things dominate the thoughts of unbelievers all over the world, but your Father already knows your needs. Seek the kingdom of God above all else, and he will give you everything you need." And I love the language he uses here. This is the good shepherd. He says, "Don't be afraid, little flock, for it gives your Father great happiness to give you the kingdom." I mean, we have a heavenly Father who owns everything. Everything you have comes from him. And he is delighted to give you the kingdom. Verse 33, "Sell your possessions and give to those in need. This will store up treasures for you in heaven. And the purses of heaven never get old or develop holes. Your treasure will be safe. No thief can steal it. No moth can destroy it. Wherever your treasure is, there the desires of your heart will be also." So if your treasure is with God, your desires will be after God. The treasure is like in your bank account, your RRSPs, whatever it is, that's where your heart will be. Again, not bad to have those things. It's not bad to have margin. It's not bad to save for the future. But that's not where your hope should be. So the best way to learn how to be rich is to follow the will of the one who made you rich. Everything you have comes from God. Everything you have comes from God. And if you put your trust in things, it will never be enough. We need to put our trust in the one who provides, in our Heavenly Father who is delighted to give you the kingdom. And we're going to talk more about how to do that next week. I'm going to ask Jean to come up and lead us in a time of prayer.